Bruce Willis, Hollywood's stand-up star, the man who played John McClane in the famous Die Hard movies and held everyone's breath. A movie star wasn't all he was. He got things done, had charm, and had an unbreakable spirit that lit up the silver screen for more than 40 years. But now that he is 70, the man who used to beat every bad guy and impossible chances on screen is in a real-life fight that is much bloodier than any script. The man who used to save the world can't do it anymore. As memories fade one by one, he can't say a word, and even walking feels like a treat. Behind those once piercing eyes is a darkness that can't be seen. He is slowly deleting bits and pieces of the man he used to be, along with every loved moment. Leave a like if Bruce Willis has ever made you laugh, cry, or believe in things that seemed impossible. This will show your respect for him and your support as he goes through the hardest time in his life. Many years before Bruce Willis became Hollywood's unbreakable hero film star, the boy was weak and stuck in a storm he didn't want. The oldest of 4 children in a broken home who carries the quiet weight of a father who is dying. He couldn't speak because he stutters all the time, and his childhood seemed set on breaking him before anyone knew his name. He was born in the small West German military town of Idar Oberstein on a cold March day in 1955. His mother was German, and his father was an American sailor. He grew up in the gray, austere Europe after the war. It was 1957, and the family left the cold barracks and cobblestone streets of Germany for the unsure promise of New Jersey. The youngest child was only 2 years old at the time, but there was no such thing as the American dream. There wasn't much money. His father's drinking caused shadows that went on for days, and by the time he was in his early teens, his parents' marriage was over. Bruce felt like he had to protect his younger siblings even though he was the oldest and no one could see his fights. The worst of them was a severe stutter that made every line sound like walking barefoot on broken glass. He would later say, "It felt like my mouth was full of cement." He was thinking about how mean kids were to him on the playground, and how the mean nickname Buck Buck stuck with him like a scar that would never go away. Trouble turned out to be both a shield and a trap. Schoolyard fighting, disobeying the rules, and being arrested for marijuana at age 19, among other things. On the inside, though, there was a hunger that was almost desperate, to show that he was more than just his scars. Under the harsh light of a high school stage light, salvation came as a surprise. Bruce found something almost magical when he was 17. The stutter went away when he did something. For the first time in his life, words did what he said. His voice was steady and clear. After many years, he would say, "That stutter was my first enemy. What I did to beat it was act." Each show was a quiet act of rebellion, a way to get back what life had taken away. By age 18, those times on stage were more than just wins. They showed that people could hear him and that he wasn't afraid to stand in the light. Those small, hard-won victories were the first steps on a path that would lead far beyond the streets of New Jersey for working-class people, toward a future that no one could have seen coming. And while the wounds he got as a child never really healed, they made him strong in a way that would come to define him. The strength to stand tall even when things around you try to knock you down. The courage to fight battles you can see and battles you can't. And the unbreakable truth that a voice that has been stolen can be found again, no matter what. Before Bruce Willis became the face of unbreakable heroes, he was a young man who lived on the edges of life, unhappy and restless because of a past that wouldn't let go. By his early 20s, he wasn't sure he would make it. It was something they did every day, getting by on a steady stream of jobs, none of which led anywhere good. He was a guard at a nuclear power plant where the fluorescent lights were very bright. As a chauffeur, he drove strangers along long, empty roads. He also carried boxes until his hands got blistered and mixed drinks in dark bars where people laughed too loudly most of the time. He even worked as a private detective for a while, following shadows for people he didn't know very well. With each paycheck, the lights stayed on, but none of it stopped the truth from biting. He was meant for more, but the way to get there was still dark and secret. Being 18 years old at the time, he went to Montclair State University to study theater because he remembered how acting had freed him from his stutter. In those years, though, that wasn't even enough to keep him tied down. He had to leave the classroom and go on a much rougher path because of the pull of the real world and the need to get things done right away. He moved to New York City with just a few dollars and an unbreakable will. He lived in a small room in Hell's Kitchen. He stood in line outside casting calls that went around the block during the day, with photos that no one would ever see. At night, he went back to the familiar sound of glasses clinking and the sticky floors of bars, where he poured drinks for people who were looking for ways to get away. Bruno was born behind the bar there, and that would be his name for years to come. You couldn't miss Bruno because he was loud and quick with a joke. He rolled around on rollerblades, wore parachute pants, and wore bandanas around his head. He played the harp with a swagger that you couldn't fake. People came in for drinks, but they stayed for him. The chatter, the energy, and the unwavering confidence. Every night was a practice run for something bigger. It was a show in and of itself. But there was still the same kid behind the quick wit and brash charm who used to get laughed at because his words got stuck. He tried out for roles and served drinks as a way to show that boy and everyone else they were wrong. He would say years later that those years weren't just about getting by. They were about making weapons. He built it up by being turned down, working endless side jobs, and the nights when he walked home with nothing but sore feet, and some cash in my pocket. Bruce couldn't have known at the time that the same bravery that kept him living on the mean streets of New York would soon catch the attention of Hollywood. He was getting closer and closer to a big break that would not only change his life, but also the way action movies are made. The interviews that used to feel like shots in Phoebe were now more like steps. Bruce Willis was just another face behind a bar in New York City in 1985. He was serving drinks, and his dreams were hard to see through the clink of glasses and the hum of bright lights. But then there was moonlighting, a chance that was so unlikely it was almost evil how rare it was. To play David Addison, he had to beat out more than 3,000 other actors. The character's quick wit and sly grin seemed to be written right into Bruce's genes. There were whispers following him even when he walked onto the set for the first time. It's too rough around the edges and punk for mainstream audiences. People may have loved him because he didn't fit the mold. Moonlighting became a big deal because of his famous smirk, his brave decision to break the fourth wall, and the chemistry that shook the screen. It was no longer the bartender. Instead of him, there was a new star holding an Emmy and a Golden Globe. But even when they won, there was a feeling of fear. Being a TV star was like a flimsy crown that could fall off at any time. That fall did not happen, not yet. Bruce got a script for a movie called Die Hard in 1988 from Hollywood. It came with a risk that could ache or break him. John McClane wasn't like any other action star. There wasn't a ripped superhero, just a man who bled, stumbled, and fought with despair written all over his body. They were not sure. The press wasn't sure. That changed when the lights came on and McClane stumbled barefoot across broken glass. Bruce Willis changed the genre. The movie was a huge hit at the box office, leading to 4 sequels and making him one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. His pay went up to $5 million, which was so big at the time that it made the news. He had a lot of money, but that couldn't protect him from the fact that every actor finds out. Making it to the top takes less time than going back down. The 1990s were a mix of brilliant success and terrible failure. Look Who's Talking, Death Becomes Her, and 1999's The Sixth Sense, all of which showed how versatile he was, were. The latter, in which he gave a hauntingly quiet performance that made $672 million worldwide. In spite of this, there were also bombs that hurt. Hudson Hawk, Color of Night, and Striking Distance were all movies that critics laughed at and that hurt the movie theater business. It doesn't take long for Hollywood to praise its heroes and then use them as jokes, and Bruce could feel the tide changing. In 1994, he made a decision that showed how strong he was. He took a big pay cut to play Butch, the broken-down fighter in Pulp Fiction by Quentin Tarantino. There was a chance, the kind that could have made them look bad. But it turned out to be a turning point. The movie's success gave his career a new lease on life and showed that, despite his cockiness, he was willing to risk everything for a part that meant something. But the grind never stopped. Bruce worked hard and was in more than 100 movies over the course of 40 years. Some of them were hits, others were easy to forget. The highs and lows of Revity were both amazing. Even with all the cameras and long days on set, There were private, unspoken times when the weight of expectation felt like a stone. There was more to failure than just work. It was emotional, like the boy who was told he'd never find his voice. Looking back, Bruce once said, "The hits you take make you stronger." Every turndown, failure, and news story that says you're done. That steel is what keeps you going. And maybe that's the best way to judge his work. Not the awards or the number of tickets sold, but the fact that it just wouldn't stay down. In Hollywood, where fame can fade in an instant, Bruce Willis fought over and over to not only get ahead, but also stay ahead. Bruce Willis won a lot of fights on screen, but he couldn't write a happy finish at home. And the first thing that seemed to shake his seemingly stable world was not a bad movie, but the slow, painful end of the love he thought would last forever. In the late 1980s, they met. Two bright stars moving around in the same Hollywood sky. Bruce Willis, fresh from his big break in The Side Job, was about to become an action superstar. And Demi Moore, who is already very attractive on TV. There was an electric pull between them right away that made everything else fade away. It was a sight to see them standing hand in hand at the altar in 1987. The public thought they were untouchable, a perfect pair who dealt with fame and family with ease. Over the next few years, they had 3 girls, Rumor, Scout, and Tallulah. Their home was full of laughter and the sound of little feet. Bruce was often away on hard film sets, but when he got home, he would melt into the part he loved the most. Picture from that time show a man who treated his kids like they were the only truth in a world full of lies. But living in Hollywood can make every crack stand out even more. Because he was always working on movies and she had a busy job, the days they spent apart got longer and the silences between them got louder. Some whispers came from newspapers and some came from deep inside their own hearts. About whether love could last when 2 people lived in different worlds all the time. By the end of the 1990s, those whispers were a pain they could not avoid. After 13 years of marriage, Bruce and Dee,